Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Community Reach Podcast, where we dive into important issues only to emerge with a better understanding and not greater knowledge. Well, today, my name is Martin Watson, and I am your host of Community Reach Podcast. And today, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people may see, uh, may not understand, but it is a major issue because we're talking about homelessness. And today we have the privilege of having Miss Erin Morton
Morton.
on today. And we're going to be discussing homelessness as through her eyes. Uh, Miss Morton was homeless, and she can tell you on firsthand basis all the things that she had to go through as a homeless individual. Good afternoon, Miss Morton. How
Good
are you?
afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
Great. I want to thank you for being on today. Um, I talked to you briefly, and you have a wealth of information. And we just want you to take the time to share it with you because the world of homelessness is truly a different world. Am I right?
It is. It's almost like it coincides with the real world, and the two don't see each other very often.
Really. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of myth that goes along with homelessness.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you've heard a few of them yourself.
Yes.
But today we want to make sure that we dispel the myth and let people really understand exactly what it's like, all the things you have to go through on a daily basis, what it's like to be homeless. I'm sorry. So let's just dive right in. So tell us a little bit about you. How did you become homeless?
Well, I'm 44, almost 42 now. I was 31 at the time. I went through a really bad divorce. And he was doing drugs and cheating, and I wanted to know what he was doing, and I dove right into it, and I lost myself. So mine started with addiction, which I had never done any drugs before that. So mine started with active addiction, and it very quickly spiraled out of control. I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost my cars, I lost my children. I lost everything very quickly. And then once I was there, it felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't get out of it. Um, and at first, I had a lot of support, but the longer I was there, the more I felt my support was dwindling. But it was more like I was pushing people away because I didn't want them to see what I was dealing with. And before I knew it, I was there for 10 years. So
10 years.
yes, I was on the streets for 10 years.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. That's terrific there. So tell us, you say you get started with it started with drugs,
Hmm.
and then it just kind of you started becoming addicted to it, the drugs, and
Yeah,
that just kind of made you
yeah.
lose everything.
I did. I lost everything very, very quickly, and it can happen to anybody very quickly. And then once you're there, things start happening that you've never expected. I started getting arrested for things that I didn't even know were crimes. Like the
Hmm.
very first time I ever got arrested was for loitering, and I didn't know what loitering was. And they told me it was being somewhere without an intended purpose. And I'm like, well, I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have an intended purpose to be anywhere. And I wasn't hurting anybody but it just, I started getting arrested for things like that and for trespassing. And I learned very quickly that it is not illegal to be homeless, but everything about being homeless is illegal.
That's a
Um,
good point. Yeah. So
so,
and you said you started with the drugs. Well, just
mhm.
kind of, and you said anybody, it can happen to anybody. What did you do before
I was
you
a
got on?
preschool teacher.
Oh, you was a preschool teacher.
Yes, I was a preschool teacher. I also worked for a grocery store on base for a very long time, traveling. Like I said, I had my own home. I had cars. I had two children, and it I lost everything very quickly. I mean, before I even realized what was happening, everything was gone. And a lot of it is I had to learn that a lot of it was me that was pushing everybody away because I didn't know how to deal with the trauma that I was going through. I had been with the same person since I was 14, and I didn't know how to deal with being alone. So I clung on to other people who were in that environment to try to help me cope with it, and learned very quickly how to survive out there, um, because it's a completely different world. I mean, it's nothing like the real world. And then the things that you never thought that you would be doing become natural after a while.
So, what's a normal day like for you? What was a normal day like for you?
Well, just doing things that take you an hour in the morning to do took me all day to do. Finding somewhere to shower, finding somewhere to brush your teeth, to shave your legs, to uh, find clothes to wear, to sleep, to eat, everything like that takes you all day. And by the time you're going to, and then add drug addiction in there, you're chasing drugs all day, finding money to get drugs, or trying to con people into giving you money to give you money for drugs. It's a cycle that doesn't end. And before you know it, your day is over. You know what I mean?
Wow, wow. And far as getting food and stuff, you told me a little bit about had you had to go in actually trash cans and stuff, and sometimes.
Oh yeah, that was common. I ate out of dumpsters a lot, and a lot of places would put, food on top because they knew we were getting in their dumpsters, and some places would call the police on us because it's illegal to get anything out of the dumpster. It's considered stealing because
Oh,
it's that property's property until it's taken away. So I've been arrested for being in the dumpster several times, but
oh,
usually
wow.
pizza, donuts, things like that are the easiest things to get. Um, but there are soup kitchens around. I was homeless in Myrtle Beach, and there was a soup kitchen there. There's a lot of resources there. But by the time I got from where I was to the soup kitchen, it was a long walk or it was a long distance. So it was a lot easier just to eat out of trash cans or ask people for money to get something to eat. Of course, some of us had food stamps, but when you get food stamps, you have to apply every 3 months. It's kind of a hassle when you don't have an address. Um, so there's a lot of things that go into that. Taking showers, there's certain places like there's shelters that will let you take showers, but for females it was a lot harder because there weren't a lot of environments for us. But I was on the beach, so there was spigots at every beach access. We would take showers there if it was warm enough. um, a lot of times we would get into hotel rooms. We could all pull together and get money for a hotel room, or sometimes even break into hotel rooms and clean up after ourselves and leave before we were done. Just so because we weren't trying to commit crimes, we weren't trying to steal from anybody, we weren't trying to hurt anybody. We were just trying to survive, you know. And the thing I got arrested for more than anything else was sleeping.
Sleeping?
Yeah, sleeping. Anytime I'd fall asleep anywhere, I would get woke up to the police department. Somebody would call, "You're asleep," they'd wake you up. I've gotten woken up sleeping many of times. I've been arrested many of times for sleeping. It's not legal to sleep anywhere but your own home, or, your own apartment or your own hotel room. So sleeping was what I got arrested for the most.
Wow, wow. That's interesting. And that was just part of your law enforcement interaction.
Yeah,
Is
and I understand that it's hard I'm not trying to bash the police department. I know
Mhm.
when I first go into it, they're the good guys, and I quickly learned around me that nobody wanted to encounter the police. And I was like, if you're not doing anything wrong, why are you scared? And I quickly
Mhm.
learned that because everything you do is wrong. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to be anywhere. You're not allowed to do anything. People, they can call the police just because homeless people are there, you
Wow.
know? And so everything we do, they're going to inspect us. And of course, add drug use onto that. You're going to get searched. And if you have anything on you, or, if they suspect that you're doing drugs, I mean, that adds a whole other value to it. But even people who don't use drugs, which is very rare in my experience, very rare in my experience, that people who are homeless don't have some sort of vice that is preventing them. But once you get into that, like, so say I stopped doing drugs and I got clean on my own. Now my options are, how do I get a job? I mean,
Hmm.
I don't have anywhere to shower. I don't have anywhere to sleep. I don't have transportation. I don't have clean clothes. Most of the businesses in the town knew who I was because of me being in front of their businesses. So they knew I was homeless. I have a record now that I can't get rid of for, loitering and trespassing and sleeping and digging in dumpsters and shoplifting and things like that.
Wow, wow. So the harder you tried to get out of the situation, you still end up in a situation because of the past.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to get a job. It's very difficult if you don't use the resources that are around you and you're not fully ready to do it. It's not you can't get out of it. If I
When
didn't
you
have lots of resources available to me that I had to utilize and be ready to remove myself from the environment, then I would have never gotten out. It would
that's
still be a cycle.
that's a great segue to what you just said. You said if you're not ready. Now, you may have heard a lot of the myth. Um, I've heard them saying a person is homeless because they want to be. What would you say to that?
I very rarely have ran into people who have said they chose to be homeless, and the ones who I did have been so beaten down that they've just accepted that way of life. You know what I mean? The people who I've met who are like, I'm choosing this lifestyle, are because they fought to get out of that lifestyle so hard and everything was against them that they just accepted it. Like, I have no family, I have no support, I have nobody now. There, and no matter what I do, I seem to get beaten back down here. So I'm just going to embrace this lifestyle, you know. But other than that, nobody wants to live that way. No one ever says, I want to grow up to be a drug addict. I want to grow up to be homeless. You know what I mean? It's not. It's not like it's not a gypsy lifestyle. It's not,
Mhm.
now you can embrace it. I embraced it for years because I felt like there was no way out. I was like, okay, I'm good at this. I can live in tent city. I can live off the beach. I can live out of trash cans and I'm good at it. And I embraced my survival like it was a badge of honor, but I was living in survival mode every day, every second of every day.
Yeah.
You're living in survival mode. And that's a terrible way to live.
So tell us about some of you say survival mode. Tell me about some of the violence you may have encountered as a homeless person.
I especially as a female, it's really hard if you don't have someone to protect you, to be on your side, to be there all the time. And I went through several bouts of being on my own. I've been violently beaten. I've been violently raped. I've been
Wow.
in bad drug deals. I've been, I mean, and these are just ways of life out there. You know what I mean? It just, and if you call the police, I've been in several. I know I have seen them help people before, but I've been in several situations with girls who were prostituting to make money because really there's not a lot of options for females out there. I mean, there's no successful. I mean, there's very few successful drug dealers that are females. There's, nobody wants to panhandle. And you can
Mhm.
get arrested for that. I've been arrested for panhandling several times. Um, so, prostitution is one of the most profitable ways to survive out there. Of course, it's very legal, it's very dangerous, and it takes a toll on your mental health. But
Right.
it's one of the most feasible ways when you're in that situation. I know that sounds ludicrous, but when you're there, that's, almost everybody I know was prostituted in one way or another. And um it's it takes a toll on you physically, mentally, emotionally, every way you can think of. And then what's more embarrassing than getting arrested for prostitution or human trafficking? Or I mean, they even have a law with loitering with intent to prostitute, loitering with intent to um, deal drugs, things like that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of laws that I didn't even know existed until I became homeless.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. You go back to saying you always say resources. So tell us how important resources were to you or that you
So
didn't
there
have.
there are a lot of resources available no matter where you are. I have found since I moved to Greenville that there's a lot more here than there was where I was in Myrtle Beach. I think Myrtle Beach has I'm not downing Myrtle Beach, but they don't know what to do with the homeless population, because for some reason everybody thinks it's easier to be homeless at the beach, and it's not. But they're okay. So some of the resources I used, there's a resource called Echo. They're the Eastern Carolina Housing Organization. They give you housing for, I got 3 months that I didn't have to pay back, but I wasn't ready to get out. I was still in active addiction, so I squandered my opportunity. But I've seen a lot of people get out using Echo. There was a resource called Firebird Recovery, who I'm still involved with. There is self harm reduction, which they provide, like, say I was heroin addict, they provided safe needles for me to use, because people don't understand when you're out there and you can't get you're going to do the drugs anyways, and you can't get the resources you need for that. You're getting infections. I had endocarditis 4 times, which is an infection in your heart. I've had so many abscesses. I've been on my deathbed several times from IV drug use because of dirty needles. And of course, I was luckily enough never to get HIV or AIDS, but that's rampant as well. So they have these resources. This was Firebird Recovery, was primarily a self-harm reduction. However, if you want out, they have help resources. They got me into rehab. They did the insurance for me, because I was so messed up. I couldn't think of how to get out. Like, by the time I wanted to get out, I had no idea how to ask for help. I mean, if it wasn't for the soup kitchen, a lot of us wouldn't have ate. If it wasn't for places like Helping Hands and things like that, I'm sure you have a lot of resources like that in Greenville as well. But
Mhm.
these are all resources you can find. I found here, Phoenix Recovery Center, when I first came here, they gave me
Mhm.
a list of resources. I mean, there's tons of places to get clothes, to get food, to get rehabilitation if you want it. You guys have centers here, like for men, the Solutions, and Turning Point, and all these places. Now, these are addiction recovery places, but they also have resources for just people who have had a run of bad luck and have nowhere to live. Because I found there's a whole batch of new homeless people out there that don't have addictions.
Right.
The economy just has gone to crap, and they're fighting to learn how to survive where we've been surviving for years because of our addiction, and they're not doing too well. So if you it might not be the first time you reach out, but the second, the third, the fourth time you reach out, if you're ready to get out of that environment, there are so many resources available to help you. There are people who actually care. There are people who actually want to help.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, Erin, it's you gave us a wealth of information today. I mean, if you let's just say where how are you doing now?
Oh, well, right now I am 103 days sober.
Okay.
I went to rehab for 30 days to a place called Waypoint Recovery in Cameron, South Carolina, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, and Firebird helped me get there. Once I got out of rehab, right before the end, they go through a whole phase where trying to figure out where you're going to go, because they're not just going to dump you out.
Right.
I got into an Oxford house, which is a recovery house here in Greenville. And they held you accountable for everything, but you had a lot of freedom. So I have a job now. Um,
Awesome.
I'm working on getting a car. I have like $2,000 saved up to get a car. So I'm working on buying a car, my first car. I got my driver's license back. Um, so things are starting. Once I set small goals and reached out for resources, I was able to obtain the small goals, because when I would look at it as everything, it was too much for me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I mean, no matter how much I reached out, it was like overwhelming, and it would crush me. So little goals at a time. There's so many resources available, and all you have to do is ask. Just ask, and they'll give you, like, when I went to the Phoenix Center, they gave me a whole pamphlet on everything there was in Greenville that you could use. You have so many resources here, so many more than Myrtle Beach had. And I personally had to change my people, places, and things. I had to get out of Myrtle Beach because I knew I could not recover somewhere where I got sick.
Hmm.
But not everyone has to do that. And you don't have to leave.
Right.
There's resources in every town that you go to, and there are good cops, there
Mhm.
are good social workers, there are good
Mhm.
community workers, and there are people who genuinely just want to help. I mean, they start these organizations for a reason.
Right. Right. And that's just some good information. I am just so glad that you're doing a lot better now, and you're on your way to getting things back to where it used to be.
Yeah.
Uh, I thought it was very interesting. Said you were a teacher,
Yes.
and you got so many people now. Did you meet other people that had a were in the profession?
Oh
Uh,
yes. Oh yes. This literally can happen to anybody. I've met correctional officers.
mhm,
I've met firemen, police officers, lawyers. I mean, really smart lawyers. I knew
mhm,
two people personally that were brilliant lawyers. Um, I've met all kinds. I mean, every profession you can think of. This is. I used to think my story was unique, and it's not unique. It's very
mhm.
common. I
Right.
mean, everybody used to be somebody. Everybody is somebody. You know, where they just whether they're distracting themselves from some sort of trauma they went through that they don't know how to process, or they had
Mhm,
a run of bad luck where they just couldn't. You know, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and that paycheck doesn't come in because you get pneumonia, you know,
mhm,
or your spouse gets sick, then what do you do then? You know, you reach out for help before it becomes to the point where I was at, where I felt like I couldn't get out of that hole. I mean, I wasted 10 years of my life. I wasted 10 years of my children's lives. You
mhm.
know, I mean, this is something that's going to take years for them to even speak to me again.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely thank you for being on today to provide us. Is there any last words you like to let us to tell us before we sign off?
If you encounter someone who's homeless, you don't have to give them money. Give them something to eat. Be kind.
There
Don't
you.
throw things at them. Don't be mean to them. They're human beings.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Erin. It's been a pleasure having you on today, and I hope someone took these words to heart because, like she said, you're just one paycheck from being homeless. And we just thank you for being on and sharing your story. And if you would like more information on the different resources that Greenville have, you're welcome to give us a call at Greenville County Human Relations. That number is 864-467-7095, and we'll be glad to get that information to you. So, Erin, thank you again. And we definitely appreciate you sharing that story with us. And we'll be talking soon.
Thank
So,
you so much.
for Community Reach Podcast, thank you for being a part of this. And we will talk to you next time.